assuming everyone enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
Beginning, I just want to say it now. Obviously, no one has seen this movie yet, so please, no spoilers online. Just don't be that person.
We're all cool here.
I'm just saying it, but listen. So you've done a lot of Q&A. They're trying to ask a few new questions. I'm going to start with, what do you think would surprise people to learn about being a director in Hollywood?
Well, first, man, Steve, thank you for doing this. You guys, thank you for coming out. I love this theater. It's such a great house. I just stood at the back for the last act and just kind of watched it with you guys. It's so much fun. I love the energy in this room, so thank you for being here. Does that answer your, was that?
That was a nice debate. What would surprise people to learn about being a director in Hollywood?
I don't know. I guess the degree, well, a slightly different kind of, to answer a slightly different question. I feel like the thing that I guess I didn't know before I got my first movie made, that you really quickly learn, is how much of the job is, that, you know, because you think, well, it's coming up with the scripts, or if you don't write, it's just coming up with how you shoot it, it's working with the actor, realizing how much of the job is kind of just being cool with people, I guess. The reality is that, like, and I know there are assholes who make great movies, but I do think that it's not just about being nice, it's about communication. And that is what 99% of the job is being a good communicator, and that means being able to get on the same wavelength with your collaborators. And so you really have to, it's about learning the people, and you also have to kind of love the people you're working with, I think that's one of the best communication happens. So I don't know if that's surprising, but probably not.
Last night, we did a Q&A last night in Westwood. I asked you about your favorite films from certain filmmakers. Tonight I'm going to throw you a few different ones. Do you have a favorite Scorsese?
Oh, God. I mean, yeah, Goodfellas, but the slightly more interesting answer, I'm a huge fan of Life Lessons, which is, it's his segment of New York Stories, which was an anthology film, and the other two segments there's a Coppola one that he kind of made with Sophia, and there's a Woody Allen one. The Scorsese one is, it's absolutely incredible. It's Nick Cage, it's like it's Nick Nolte, thank you. That would be interesting. It's Nick Nolte as a painter, and it's Rosanna Arquette as kind of his muse, and it's got kind of the camera energy of After Hours a bit, but it's so good, man. And it's just like I get a pure kind of Scorsese energy, and it's and also Steve Buscemi plays like a performance artist partway through it in an early role. But anyway, Life Lessons worth tracking down.
The next one is Guillermo del Toro.
Has everyone seen Frankenstein?
Yeah.
It's like his heart is up on the screen. It's so beautiful. I love that movie. I mean, I think, you know, Pan's Labyrinth is my favorite of Guillermo's, but I love all his films. Okay.
And the last one is going to be James Cameron.
Ooh. So, I mean, tough ones. All right, I'll say the first Terminator.
Yeah. Woo.
Perfect movie, and it's literally a perfect film. Everything from the script, but he's made several perfect films. I don't want to apply the other side, but that is just like, and the fact that he did it on the budget that he did it, to me, that was always a movie that, when I was trying to get my first movie made, was really, really inspiring. It's just, it's kind of, you can do a down and dirty version of something. If you tell a good story well, it'll, you know, and if you're James Cameron, it'll feel like that. So, yeah.
Speaking of Brick, this year's 20 years at Sundance, but next year's 20 years since it was released. Are you planning on doing
Yeah.
special?
Oh man, let's say, should we meet back here?
Yeah.
I'm psyched that people are still watching that movie and still into it. It was we did in Chicago. We did my buddy Adam, who has the podcast Film Spotting. We did Film Spotting show. We did a great screening of it at the Music Box Theater in Chicago, and seeing it kind of with a crowd, with a packed crowd, was really fun. So let's do it. I'll see you here next year.
Yeah. You rock.
You've worked on a lot of projects. What shot or sequence do you consider the toughest of your career?
You mean to shoot in terms of logistics of shoot anything?
You know.
I don't know. Toughest. I'm trying to think of how to answer it without, because you don't want to sound like you're whining. It's so hard. But I'd say maybe the most. The most involved was. Go back to I'll say this because this was interesting. When we made The Last Jedi, the opening sequence was just like a big bombing run where things go very kind of poorly. That was something that obviously had been written, and then I storyboarded the whole thing, and then worked with previous, got it all put together, and then it was just kind of fat. It didn't quite work, and so that's something that we kind of reconstructed in the edit and kind of consolidated, and it took a lot of it. Any of you who are filmmakers know the edit, the thing where suddenly you're literally like, wait a minute, can we take this thing and stick it here? It was that kind of thing. And then when it did click together and it felt like a Lego set that had been designed that way, that was kind of like a just like it's that breath of relief type moment. And it's like you get a sequence working. So I don't know if that's the hardest, but that comes from.
Every once in a while, I hear about a project and it just floors me, and it ties into Star Wars. So it was recently came out that Soderbergh and Scott Z. Burns were developing a script for Adam Driver to be like, I forget what it's called, The Hunt for Ben Solo.
Yeah.
I definitely have to ask you, like, what was your thoughts when you heard Soderbergh and Scott Burns might be
take my money? Come on, Disney, say it.
I mean, it's one of those that you're like, are you even kidding? Like, Soderbergh, Star Wars?
I only know what I read online. I didn't know anything about it. I was like, so I don't know what happened. Who knows with how things are developed? But man, I'll watch Driver and anything, man. But I love to see him play that character again. Yeah.
You directed Bruce Willis in one of his last, I'm going to say, cool roles, which is Looper in 2012. Can you reminisce a little bit about working with Bruce and just, it's Bruce Willis?
Yeah, I coming into Looper, I'll be honest, I was terrified because. Bruce was what got the movie financed, basically. That, we kind of put the movie together kind of semi-independently, and Bruce Willis in an action movie was the reason, especially after my second movie, which I was really proud of, but nobody saw. It didn't make any money. Getting Looper out on speed was a real feat of producing by Ron Bergman back there, my producer. So we had Bruce, we needed him, and I heard stories that he would be really tough, that he could be very tough to work with, and so I was kind of pissing myself. I was really nervous. He shows up on set. We shot in New Orleans, and he was the easiest person in the world. He worked his ass off. He cared so much. He wouldn't go back to his trailer between setups. He would just hang out on set. We moved faster when Bruce was on set than we did with anyone else. And he just really deeply cared about getting it right. And I mean, on a set full of like old friends, like Bruce was kind of the dream to work with. He was so wonderful and lovely, and I missed him. I talked to him for a long while. I know he's not well right now, so I had such a great experience with him.
Jumping to why we're all here tonight. You had such success with the first two Knives Out films. When you go to sit down and write this one, or even the second one after the success of the first, do you feel the added pressure, or like what is it actually like? Because, and especially with this one, because the first two nominated for Oscars, hugely popular, everyone loves them. What is it like?
Jesus, I'm now writing the fourth. I'm gonna feel like.
Yeah! More Knives Out forever!
I mean, kind of, not really. It's, I mean, all the stuff that you just described is kind of, I mean, first of all, I feel so lucky that people like the first two, so the fact that there is that quote unquote pressure is just a good thing. But also, I think, and this was the case because I got asked a version of that question with the Star Wars movie, like with the pressure from the outside and all that. The reality is, and I don't know if you guys find this, those of you write or make stuff that just once you actually get your hands in the dirt, and once you're actually in the process and just trying to make something good, I know for me, you suddenly are in a bubble, and there's very little room in my brain for holding an abstract notion of the outside world and what the pressures are of it. I think it's sort of the production and everything is sort of and writing is sort of a version of just being in, you got your head down and you're just kind of in it, or you are at least when it's working. So I think the work blessedly takes all that stuff away. In a way.
How much are you thinking about casting when you're writing the script? Are you envisioning certain actors? Are you how does that work?
I mean, I've learned to kind of not envision actors because that's kind of like a pathway to heartbreak, I've learned, because inevitably schedules don't work out or somebody passes and you don't get the person, and if you've written the whole script with that in mind. Also, there's the thing you hear people talk about, which I think is true, of if you're writing with an actor in mind, really what that means is unless a good friend of yours, you're writing with somebody else's performance and you have performance in another movie in mind, and that's not really fair to the actor, especially in these where it's really fun to find actors and kind of give them something to do that they maybe haven't quite done yet. So, in writing, I guess it's good to, as much as you can, I think, keep a clean slate.
Josh is fantastic in this, and for people who don't realize, he's going to be the lead in Spielberg's movie next summer. She takes some credit for that.
All of it. Every single fucking ounce. No. Actually, I just feel very lucky we caught him at the right moment because Spielberg, he's working with like Joel Cohen, he just shot his movie with him, he worked with Kelly Reichardt, who's one of my favorite American directors, he's just working with the greats, and so, I'm lucky I feel grateful we got him when we did. He's really something special. Having just seen him work and how effortless he makes it on set, and I'm convinced I can do anything. He's pretty amazing.
I'm still curious what you were like as a director on set. I've seen certain directors work where they're giving really intense, not intense, but like notes, really talking, and others who will be very silent most of the time, and every once in a while it's like a word. How are you?
I'm a screamer and a thrower. I'm a monster. I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I think, like when directing actors, which I think is the part you're talking about, I feel like your job, or at least the way I approach it, the great thing about directing is you never get to watch other directors work. And so I think we're all kind of have our own way. We've fallen into doing it, and you kind of assume you're doing it wrong all the time. But I kind of wish there was like an internship program for directors where you just hang out on other directors' sets. But that always feels weird when you do that. But so I think your job is to be an audience for the actors, and so for me, it's sitting there either next to the camera at the monitor, and between when you call action and when you call cut, the work is to turn yourself into an audience member, to sit back as if and just have an emotional reaction to what you're seeing in front of you, as opposed to an analytical one. And so, and then after you call cut, you have a few seconds when you're walking forward to parse that emotional reaction and think of it in the big picture and think, okay, so what could be different? But then the other thing is, I think you also quickly learn, especially when you're working with good actors, it's not like you have to no, it's not like you have to talk in code or say the exact right thing or like say something, be the Buddha on the mountain who says something brilliant that unlocks everything. You just have to speak, I think, honestly, and you don't have to say too much. I think that's not the other thing I've learned is if you found yourself talking for a while, it's probably a bad thing. I think the fewest amount of words you can say and communicate the reaction and what you think that means in the context of the scene, the better.
You made 3 Knives Out films. Which one was the easiest and which one was the hardest to write?
Well, the first one, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I had been thinking about it for 10 years before I wrote it, so it definitely came the easiest. This one is by far the hardest thing I've ever written. This was incredibly difficult, this script, and it was kind of a combination of it was a combination of, I mean, the mystery was kind of more intricate because it's the locked door thing, which is kind of tricky to get right. But the bigger element of it was the faith element, the religion element, which is something that's really personal to me. I grew up very Christian. I wasn't Catholic. I was Protestant. I was evangelical, basically. Grew up as a youth group kid. But up through my mid-20s, it wasn't just like going to church with my family. It was like a deeply personal thing, my faith. That's how I framed the whole world, was my relationship with Christ. It was something that's really real to me. And I'm not a believer anymore. And so I have a lot of deep feelings about it. And part of the challenge setting out with this thing was, okay, can I actually like kind of have not kind of a didactic kind of finger wagging moral lesson about this stuff, but can I have actually kind of a multifaceted exploration of this thing in the context of a big entertaining Benoit Blanc mystery. And that was kind of the challenge, and it was so that was actually the really difficult part, was just writers in the audience know it's just the balance of everything, and there were a lot of very very potent ingredients in the stew to kind of get right to beat the analogy to death.
I have no idea how you write these scripts. I'm sure everyone in this audience has no idea how you write these scripts. So I'd like to ask you, how do you write these scripts?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I've had people ask, like, you start at the end, you start with like who done it, you start with the killer. I don't. I start kind of. I start zoomed back, I guess. I start thinking about kind of the simplest arc of the whole thing, and that generally is not, that's not the mystery. That's not like the murder and who done it and how. I think one thing that that was kind of like a starting thesis for me on the first movie, on Knives Out, that served me well with the following two is just remembering, trying to force myself to constantly remember that the mystery elements will never keep an audience entertained, that they're not load-bearing structures, that they're basically, you need to find an engine that is as strong, that is the same as any other movie. You need a protagonist, you need them to want something, you need them, they can't get it, and the audience gives a damn about that. And that's it. So that's kind of what I started with, is figuring out what was the actual arc of this thing. And then when you start building the mystery and zooming in beat by beat and figuring out the details, the hope is that you're then building those genre elements and those mystery elements and all those things to support this basic spine of an emotional story of your main character. This guy who wants to be a good priest and wants to bring, the forgiveness of Christ to the most broken people in the world who need it the most. And then at the end, him getting a chance to do exactly that. It's kind of what's going to serve that journey. So that's kind of big.
Who are you actually, like, I would imagine during the writing process, you must second guess yourself at a certain point. Like, who?
Every single minute of every second.
Well, I'm so serious when I say, like, who are the anchors that you can show rough drafts of your scripts to and get, like, the feedback that you need to complete the mission?
For this script, it's two friends of mine, Dan and Stacey Sheridan, who are two of my dear friends since film school, and they're a husband and wife writing team that I'm just really tight with. And we've been reading each other's stuff for so many years, and on this movie in particular, they were people who we were just kind of, write like an ad, like 40 pages of it, and I would send it over to them and say, "Is this working?" And they go, "We love you, but no." Yeah, I know that, sir. They were just, we all have friends as writers that we end up leaning on. Dan and Stacey for this one. Dan is actually in the movie. He plays the guy at the video monitors who is the police station. Footage. Dan is also, the two people who keep putting Dan in roles in things are me and Paul Thomas Anderson. Dan is the guy on the phone with Leo and
Oh,
gosh. So,
what fiber did?
slowly building a resume in me, in my movies, and DJ's movies. So, it was also in Licorice Pizza. He was the director in the audition for the movie they're making with Sean Benson. Anyway, so that's who it was. You didn't see that coming. Gosh.
The real mystery.
I truly had no idea. So talk a little bit about how much these scripts have possibly changed along the way. And like, have you gone through dramatic? You've never done a page one rewrite. I mean, how?
Oh yeah, really close to it. Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, well, going back, Looper, I actually, I wrote the whole script, and then, there's kind of a hard reset right in the middle of that design where we go to the farm, and I got the whole thing done, and finally was like, phew, and then realized the back half from that to the end wasn't working, and so I threw it all out and rewrote it. And with this one, I did more rewriting with this movie than I've done with anything. I have so many versions of the first act, especially with this. No, you have to. I mean, it's just, it sucks and it's just painful, but you gotta do it, because I think especially the more stuff you make, you realize you're gonna pay the piper at one end or the other. You're gonna either kind of be hard on yourself and do the hard work in the writing, or you're gonna be, it's gonna come out the other end. In the edit, you're gonna be sitting there, with a lot of the money having been spent on it, regretting good choices. And so I don't know. Yeah, I rewrite it from tremendous amounts.
For people that are curious, I think there's like the dream of like, I will sit down and write this amazing script in 2 weeks. How long does it take to actually write one of these?
Well, yeah, I wish it were 2 weeks. It was no, I spend probably generally 8 to 10 months writing a script. That's pretty fast for me. Like Looper took me like 2 years to write, and of those, say it's 10 months, I'd say 8 of them generally are spent outlining in just these little notebooks that I work in. And it's outlining, but it's not just structural plot stuff, it's also coming up with characters, figuring out the themes that I talked about earlier with like the big broad line and all that stuff. And so it's all of that stuff. I try to wait to sit down to type until I have it really living in my head, and have a real sense of it. Because once I get it in script format, it's a lot harder to rework it.
You put Joseph Gordon-Levitt in all your films. I believe he's the baseball announcer in this.
Yeah, just his voice, but he's announcing baseball games. Yeah. No, I was gonna say the baseball game in it. I thought it was being so clever. The movie's set in 2025. We shot it last year, and so it was set in the future when we were shooting it. And we found the base. That's why it's a Cubs game. We found a baseball game that was happening during the day on Good Friday of 2025. And used that, like very last minute before the mix, we comped that into the TVs. And I thought, oh, this is so cool because it could actually be happening on that day, and this all lines up. And then the next day, I think it was the next day or the next, right? But basically in the movie when they're actually doing the investigation, in real life in 2025, the Pope died. And so I thought, well, they would probably be talking about that in the movie. So, the Pope dying blew my movie timeline. I was so pissed off about it. Well, that's the worst thing about the Pope dying.
You've worked with Steve Gedlin as your DP since the beginning of your career. Talk a little bit about yeah. Talk a little bit about something that I'm fascinated by is there's no right way to make a movie. And Ridley Scott shoots with like 7 or 8 cameras. Roger Deakins only shoots with one. How do you and Steve typically like to work on set, and has it changed from the beginning to where you are now?
Yeah, I think I don't know, in some ways it's really, really similar to how we started out, but also slowly evolves. When we began, we just used one camera, and I think we've slowly learned how to use 2 cameras as we've gone along. Generally, though, it's getting the hero shot that's something that's storyboarded with one, and then seeing what we can get with the other that's a good shot that's not in the way. But then in these movies specifically, sometimes we use 3 cameras, and that can be really useful, especially in the group shots. Because you learn really quickly in the edit that those big group scenes are built out of reaction shots. And so you do just have to get coverage of everybody listening to everything. It's really important. And so it's the one instance where we'll actually just grind around at some point you've shot all the big dialogue exchanges, and then you just grind around the room and shoot everyone's reaction shots. And sometimes, if it's close to the end of the day, we'll have like 3 cameras on top of each other, getting 3 different people's reaction shots. And then the 4 actors are looking at pieces of tape on the cameraman's ears to get the eye line right and everything. And so anyway, yeah, you do what you gotta do.
A lot of people don't realize how scheduling can affect a movie, and how you could be shooting the most important scene on the first day, or something like every shoot must be different.
Yeah.
So as a director, how much are you trying to figure out, like, what you want to shoot in the first week, or how much are you looking at the schedule as a director to, get certain things out of it that maybe, you, through your experience, have found it's better to do this in the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's kind of ends up being a thing with you and the first AD, and Richard Goodwin was our first AD on this. It was my first time working with him. He was fantastic, and he works with Fincher a lot, and he's got it down. He's a sweet, sweet dude, and I think the good ADs are conscious of that. And so, like the Jamie Christopher, who he passed away recently, but he was our AD for Last Jedi and for the first Knives Out. He and Richard are the type of ADs where their head will be in that space you're talking about. And so when they come to me with the first draft, they'll be after this at the beginnings, I feel like emotionally you want to be easing into this or that. One thing that also is good with these movies is to put a big group scene near the beginning of the schedule, as close as you can. Because with an ensemble like this, you realize a scene like that lets the other actors kind of find each other's like water level, sort of. And you can see them kind of watching everyone else and seeing where they're playing it and kind of tuning in. And so having like one of the directory scenes where everyone's around and everyone has a bit to do, and we put one of those near the beginning of the schedule. But then sometimes you're in the corner and you just gotta, it's becoming the catchphrase of you gotta do what you gotta do.
I feel like a lot of actors, and they say that they really, really love shooting stuff from the middle of the movie in the first week or 2, because the middle of the movie people have bought into what they're selling. And I don't know if this is right or wrong. I'm obviously not an actor, but it actually, to me, it made sense. I'm like, yeah, by the middle of the movie, I'm in it.
Hopefully. Yeah, that's the hope. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. I think it is absolutely true. And there was a section in the middle of the movie where, this to me translates into the other group, where you realize you can start shorthanding things, and you can start skipping shoe leather, and you can start hopping. You start to realize there is a point where you can kind of speed up the timeline of how the audience is getting stuff, and then because you just have to kind of zoom back and kind of drill in at the end, I guess, to make some edits.
I can't pronounce Bob. What's Bob's last name?
Do you say, how are you going to pronounce it?
Don't
say.
Yeah, who knows? We'll skip that. But he's your editor, and he's cut the Knives Out movies.
Yeah.
I'm so curious, what is that working relationship like? Does he take a stab at the movie before you come in the editing room? Like, what's the dynamic?
So he assembles while we're shooting, and that's so that, and this has been very useful. Sometimes we'll get feedback from him where he'll be like, well, I think you might want to get an insert shot of this. I think you might be missing like a reaction shot of this person reacting to this. And that's saved our butts a few times. It's really nice to know that and grab that while you're shooting as opposed to owe it after the fact. But he'll do his assembly. I years ago stopped watching assemblies, and it was the healthiest emotional decision I've ever done. Because as a director, especially someone who I started out
I should pause real quick because there's going to be people out there who don't know what an assembly cut is.
Oh, so the assembly cut is the editor's first cut. It's before you've worked with them at all. It's they put it together. It's the whole movie, but it's just them doing it. And Bob is one of the best editors working in the business. It's not because it's poorly edited, but if you're someone who I started editing my own stuff. I have a really specific idea of how I want it, and also even if you don't, there's something about seeing it put together for the first time in its big shaggy gloriousness that just makes you want to shoot yourself in the face every single time. So I've found it's universal, and so I've found that I don't sit down and watch the whole assembly. What we'll do is we'll do it reel by reel. Even in the digital age, the movie is broken up into like 20-minute reels, so just make it easier to work with. And so we'll watch the 20-minute reel, stop, take a breath, and then work on that reel and do a pass together, and recut it and get it to the point where I feel like I've done my thing with it. And then we'll do that reel by reel with it. And then sometimes we'll go back and do another pass of doing reel by reel, or sometimes we'll then watch the whole thing strung together, just me and him. But yeah, giving myself permission to not watch assemblies, I think was because it was always rough.
So then I'm curious about is like how many takes do you like to typically do? And do you find yourself like it's 3 or 4 takes every time, or do you do a lot of 1 or 2 takes and say, yeah, we got it?
I'm probably closer in the 3 or 4 range, but sometimes I don't know. But I think the reality is you go until you feel like you've got it, and so sometimes it's 3 or 4 takes. Sometimes it's sometimes I don't know. We get to like 15, then it's time to
Do you know what's the most? Do you remember what's the most you've ever done?
I don't, but I remember the one that felt like the most was in The Last Jedi. There's a scene right after that scene I described where it starts with Carrie slapping Oscar, and she really fucking slapped him. And it was the first day, I think, of us working with them. Definitely, it was one of the first days of shooting, and I was so amped up. I was at the monitor. I was like, just let it slap him, but yeah. So slap, and it took us because as I wanted to let her kind of ramp up, and so we did like 20 takes of it, and Oscar just took it like a champ, and that was Carrie's side of it, and then we turned around. Another like 15 takes of it, and I think Oscar was like, yeah. Do you have it in for me or something? He was still doable, but yeah, it was only after the adrenaline wore down. I was like, oh shit, we could have started after the slap after the first 2 takes, probably.
This is why you and Oscar are going to work together again.
No. It's my dream. Get back on set with that man and slap him up again.
The next Knives Out, bring it back.
I'm almost out of time. I just want to go back to editing just real quick. How have the films changed in the editing rooms in ways you didn't expect? And with any of the 3 or specifically with this one?
Well, I mean, in a way, these movies are kind of jigsaw puzzles, and so it's not like the thing I described in the last year. It's not like you get your cards up and you're like, oh, what did this act run before this act? Is anything crazy like that? They're kind of linear, but you do still end up doing changes that are big enough to where they might seem surprising. In this movie, I got to the very near the end of the process, and I did something I'd never done before that I started doing on every movie because it was really useful. We were a week out from mixing, so we should have been locked basically, and I was very insecure about the running time of the movie. I thought, have I been, because it's the longest of the 3, I thought, have I been hard enough on the movies? Is there anything I've been precious and held on to that, should I still, and so I editor Bob and I went into the edit of the weekend, just the 2 of us, and we made a copy of the movie in the Avid, so it was an exercise we were doing. It wasn't going to be the actual film, and we did the asshole studio cut. And I actually I had a lot of fun. I put on like a persona of like an asshole studio. Why are we still in the fucking church? Go away, British. No one wants to see it. And we basically, anything that could actually come out, we slashed. And we cut, basically from the movie that you guys watched, we cut about 30 minutes out of it. And it was, in one way, it was also really cathartic. It's kind of like, I don't know what Ray Jerooms sort of. And you guys know at the end of the editing process, you hate your own movies so much. Going in there with a machete and just hacking it to pieces kind of feels good. But also, it was very useful because, to a lesser extent, because there were a couple of things we found that did actually, we're like, oh, some version of that could actually be a good cut. More so though, because for me, it let me know why the stuff that was in there did have to be in there. And sitting down and watching it without all that stuff and feeling, oh, if you don't have this, then at the ending you don't feel the emotional impact of this. That was so incredibly useful for me to just be able to kind of take a breath of relief and put most of it back in and kind of say, okay, we can go next time.
You've been working on these Knives Out movies for a number of years. I obviously would love if you make another, but I'd also be super happy if you made something else. Have you already started thinking about what you might do next?
Yeah, I'm writing right now. I'm writing not another one of these. I'm writing something original that's it's kind of I guess it's kind of like a paranoid thriller sort of. I don't know, it's weird. We'll see. We'll see. But I mean, it's not because I'm sick of making it. It's actually after this experience, I feel really energized. So I'm hoping we can. I don't know. As long as it's fun, as long as you guys keep digging, and we'll come back and keep making them every few years. I'd be happy.
Knives Out forever.
I have so many other things, but I'm out of time. Are there any Easter eggs in the movie that you would like people to look for the next time they watch it?
No, you mentioned the Joe thing, and I'm trying to think if there's another fun one. There's all sorts of little tidbits in Lee's office, which we're only in briefly, to write Andrew Scott's office. There's little kind of, I'm sure there are some, and the Dan's computer thing, all the little Funko things. There's definitely a Ray and Kylo in there somewhere. But, and then there is, because in Glass Onion, we had Jeremy Renner's hot sauce, and all of that in the bar. See it though. And then also, I know this counts as an Easter egg, but and I don't know who he is. So Noah Segan, who plays the bar guy, this pizzeria owner, he was really into this pizzeria wrestler. Someone here probably knows who he is. His poster is on the wall. He isn't? Someone know?
Yeah.
What's his name? Do you know?
Wait, you said, oh, I'm super sorry. You said Noah Segan, right?
Oh, no, I know Noah Segan. Yeah, there's a wrestler, a professional wrestler he's into, whose character is like a pizza maker. He's like the Italian wrestler. He's wearing a pizza apron. And he's on the wall like this. And Noah's like, trust me, everyone's going to see that. So this brings me much joy. I can refer that back to Noah. So. Hey, there you go. Boom. We got one. Unless that's Noah Segan back.
I'm just going to say, Ryan, I really appreciate you doing this. And ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the movie, please spread the word on this thing called social media.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, Rian Johnson.
Rian Johnson! Thank you, sir.